day of Ramadan for my talk. Seems like it worked well. Um, so tonight, those of you who don't know me, my name is Adnan. I've been working with the IT Institute since 2014, one of the instructors over there. And tonight we will be talking about how to avoid the post-Ramadan relapse. Now, what do we mean by that? Relapse, if you look up just relapse in general, it means deterioration after a certain period of self-improvement. And indeed, in Ramadan, we came together like we, do certain diets, focused diets, or we go to the gym and do certain focused training. Similarly, for improving ourselves, similarly, Ramadan is our training school for which we come together and we engaged in focused ibadah, which is fasting, in order to improve ourselves. So, using the famous analogy of going to the gym, when we go to the gym, we're trying to, build our muscles, we're trying to, strengthen ourselves and, improve our health, etc. If we do diets, such and so forth, when we do, like, some people do mind exercises because they want to engage their mind into, basically becoming better thinkers and all that kind of stuff. So in Ramadan, indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala set these days for us to engage in a specific ibadah that's going to build a specific muscle. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, what does He say about Ramadan? أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prescribed on the believers fasting so that we may attain taqwa. So the muscle that we're trying to build in the Ramadan is the muscle of the heart. The Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in a hadith, pointed towards the heart and said, "Taqwa is here. Taqwa is here." So we need to think about it like this. Apart from all the delicious aftars and the meetups and the deep fried stuff and the fruit chaats are good, alhamdulillah, healthy. And apart from all of that bonus that comes in this package of Ramadan, we're engaged in a very focused training, which is to train this muscle of taqwa. Now, who can tell me what taqwa is? What is taqwa? Let's try to understand what taqwa is. Let's make this more interactive. Yeah, I don't want to be the only one speaking. If you guys want to open your cameras, please do so. It just helps me. Sister Nigar, go ahead. What is taqwa?
Is it, I would say, like actions based on God consciousness. So you're not only like conscious of Allah, but you're actively trying to avoid displeasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's your actions based on that.
Okay, Jazakallah khair. Who else? Anybody else wants to say what taqwa is? What do we mean by taqwa? We have, it's better if you guys speak up, inshallah. So Allah sees you wherever He wants and not in the place He doesn't like. Okay, so we're trying to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The famous conversation that we usually quote when we talk about taqwa is a conversation that took place between Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anh and Ubay ibn Ka'b radiallahu anh. And Umar ibn Khattab asks Ubay ibn Ka'b, what is taqwa? And he says that he asks him back, basically, have you walked, between thorny bushes on a narrow path sort of before? And he says, yes. So he asked him, okay, so how do you walk on this narrow path that is filled with thorny bushes? And he says that I gather up, my thobe, and I'm very careful on how basically where I'm putting my feet, and I'm watchful that, the thorns don't basically come and hurt me or catch into his toe, basically. So it's that you get this idea of moving cautiously with purpose, being, taking all the precautionary measures, understanding the dangers that are there, so that we can prevent ourselves and protect ourselves from those dangers. And indeed, taqwa, which comes from the root words of waqa and waqaya, which means shield and protection, is that we're protecting ourselves against, we're being cautious against the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which ties into our iman, our belief, which is what that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us and He sent down guidance for us. He set a criterion for human actions. Every human action has a value. Either things are, rewarded, or there's sinful behavior. So things are halal and haram. Knowledge of that, basically, once you have the knowledge of that, like you have the knowledge of the thorns being something that is detrimental to you, it's going to hurt you, then you practice this kind of walk, the taqwa walk, let's call it, where we're very cautious, we're very, once we understand, we understand the dangers of our nafs and shaitan and the bad deeds and the effect of our sins and the physical manifestations of those sins, all the things that are detrimental to us and our success, we try to stay away from them. Anything that is going to cause the displeasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we stay away from it. And anything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves and makes us come closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, those things we purposefully engage in. Another ayah in the Quran, and this is something we hear every Friday, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Imran, ayah number 102, يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. Like, oh, you believe, have taqwa of Allah and do not die except in a state of complete submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So have taqwa of Allah. And how do we have taqwa of Allah? We have taqwa by submitting to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded us to do. Now, Ibn Mas'ud comments on this ayah, and he says that having taqwa basically in this ayah means that we obey Allah and we do not disobey Him, that we remember Allah and we do not forget Him, and that we be grateful to Allah and that we do not be ungrateful to Him. Another place, another hadith, basically narrated by Abu Dhar and Mu'adh ibn Jabal, where they basically say that the Prophet ﷺ said to ittaqillah, be cautious of Allah wherever you are. So it's a command to be cautious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then he says, follow the bad deed with a good deed to erase it, and engage others in with beautiful character. So all these things, basically, what are they telling us? That this walk, this staying away from things that deteriorate our spiritual health, really, like we go to the gym to avoid deterioration of our physical health, or we engage in mental exercises to avoid the deterioration of our mental health. Likewise, we must engage in this taqwa in order for us to keep ourselves, be successful, and keep ourselves away from things that are going to deteriorate really our purpose of existence. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put a mission on our head, right? What's our mission in life? Who can tell me? What's the mission set by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on our heads? Brother Ali says to establish the Deen. Please speak up, inshallah. Open your cameras if you can. Okay, to establish the Deen. What does that mean? What ayah in the Quran points us towards our purpose of existence? Anybody?
Assalamualaikum, Adnan. I'll mention two of them.
Walaikum salam. Go ahead.
This is for you, by the way. So, inni ja'ilun fil ardi khalifa. And number one, And related to that, وَمَا خَلَقْتَ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ.
Jazakallah khair. So وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that He created, the entire purpose of our creation is to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which means for sure believing in Allah and obeying Him and submitting Him. Again, engaging in this taqwa walk will sort of make us submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and nothing else. It's really like, I'm trying to basically give you guys, how we would sort of the emotion behind it. We look at our bank accounts, right? We're so cautious and we're so we're always taking precautionary measures in protecting ourselves against basically going bankrupt or what have you, or so we're checking our debits and our credits, analogous to our good deeds and our bad deeds. We're always cautious of where the money is going, where are we spending our money, making like a management system around it, so that we're cautious of how to basically control this. And similarly, when we build this muscle of taqwa, it enters, like we enter ourselves into the state of being cautious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and our purpose in this life, and how we need to walk with caution. And part of that for sure is recognition of what is bad and what is good for us. So now coming back to Ramadan as the school that was basically targeting to build this sort of muscle, this muscle of the heart. What do you guys think? How did Ramadan help us do that? How did we build that? Like, we're not really, like picking up like weights to build our biceps, or doing mental exercises to sort of build our reasoning. Like, what did we do? What built this muscle? What do you guys think? Yalla, people, let's speak up, inshallah. What do you guys think?
From staying away from food and drink and halal relations. It's putting like how do you say, like you're putting your nafs basically in a chokehold. So you're putting a damper on your nafs, and when you go without these things, it makes it easier for you to connect to Allah, because you're not distracted, and you become in like a state where like it's just easier to have that connection.
Okay, Jazakallah khair. So we engaged in some added actions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had made fard upon us on this month. And the two most basic human desires, which is the appetites, the two appetites, the appetite for food and the appetite for sexual relations, we avoid those, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala adds this added liability in the month of Ramadan on those two actions, which are the most difficult, right, to control. And but how does this build? How do basically engaging in this act of staying away from our most basic desires connect to building the muscle of taqwa? What's the missing link? Like, how do you link this? What is happening? What is happening?
And then I can give it a try. Yeah. So there's a level of restraint that you do. Your stomach is yelling for food, and there's a level of restraint you do, but that restraint is for a purpose, which is like you're following the commands of Allah and restraining yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a level of accountability there, and I like to really focus on the fasting, because it's restraining from fasting when you're alone and the fridge is right there and the Coke is right there and the mouth is watering and nobody's watching, but Allah is watching, right? So that is one of the most pure form of sincerity, and this is why I have a lot of respect for people that fast, because it shows sincerity. So restraint and for the sake of Allah.
Okay, Jazakallah khair. So indeed, what you said basically about engaging in the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and these two are acts that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His wisdom has prescribed. But really, the link is practicing obedience. If you want to just take that as a phrase, well, what we're doing is we're practicing obedience. Practicing obedience is building our muscle of taqwa. See, in other places in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, for example, when He's talking about qisas, the law of qisas, He basically says, practice it so that you can, become righteous, attain taqwa. Again, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-A'raf talking about the people, when He raised the mountain above them and He tells them, take this message with determination and then follow it so that you can attain taqwa. And similarly in Surah Baqarah, when He's talking to the people of Bani Israel, same thing, take this message with determination, follow it, so that you can attain taqwa. In another place in Surah Baqarah, when He's talking to the people, يا أيها الناس اعبدوا ربكم الذي خلقكم والذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. Again, worship your Lord who has created you so that you may become righteous. So we see the underlying idea is what? The underlying idea is to practice submission, to practice obedience. And this is what we do, which builds our muscle of taqwa. We step out of our comfort zones, we go an extra mile with this added liability to basically build and develop this muscle. Now, next, why do we need to build this muscle? Why do we need taqwa? Why is it important? Like, okay, I understand, we need our mind to basically live in this life. We exercise our mind, we make it strong, and we're worried about all this stuff all the time, right? We're delving into all sorts of self-development, and we're fixing our bodies because we know, okay, you know what, if I don't take care of my body now, when I hit 40, when I hit 45, it's going to be pretty sad, and it's not going to be fun. So we develop all those things and we pay attention to it. So why taqwa? Why do I need to build this muscle of taqwa? So Sister Sayyida says Jannah, destination. How is taqwa going to help you reach Jannah, Sister Sayyida? It helps us obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let me just open so I can see the full thing. It helps us obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's command 100%. Okay, Jazakallah khair, perfect. So we go back to our mission, the mission that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent. Saves us from hellfire, saves us from the fitna of this world. Taqwa will prevent us from slipping or straying 100%. Having taqwa keeps you in a state of consistent awareness of the accountability that hangs over our heads 100%. Jazakallah khair, everybody. So on point answers. We go back to our mission. Now, isn't this the most important thing in the world? Building this muscle. Even more than basically taking care of our bodies and taking care in terms of priority of our minds. Building this muscle, it doesn't take priority and special attention, which is why we have really this month, and which is why we're really talking about how not to relapse, go back into deterioration, like we would do if we leave a certain diet, we go back onto our old ways, we gain more weight. We leave our exercise, we go back, and our body goes back into deterioration. Similarly, we don't want to go back into deterioration mode. We don't want to go back into a state where we start disobeying Allah, because our success in this dunya and the akhirah depends on this. The mission of life, the purpose of our existence, why each and every individual exists on this planet, depends on the development of this specific muscle. That is why it is so important, and that is why we need to know why basically and how we need to keep it strengthened at all times. And Ramadan definitely is giving us a glimpse of that. See, in today's society, it's a pretty narcissistic society. There's different basically ideas out there of what a human being is, or what the self-worth of a human being is. Some people basically, would associate, a certain amount of wealth, for example, if a person is wealthy, or the number of kids, or, what you own, or what your social status might be in society, to be seen as the human worth. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has set, our worth. We do not derive our self-worth from these ideas that are man-made, and for sure in this messed up society that we live in. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that we derive our worth in only one thing, which is really the strength of this muscle, which is the person who has the most taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is why it's important to build this muscle. Because that is your worth, that is my worth. In the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the sight of the Creator, who created everything, who has power over everything, who cannot be challenged, and who basically tells us what to do, and we submit to his commands. This Creator is telling us what we are worth in his eyes. And what we are worth is directly correlated to the strength of our muscle of taqwa. So, it's important to understand, especially living in a society, to get rid of this false sense of self-worth that comes with, all these garbage ideas, and to really understand that, our sense of self-worth or our value is derived from how much cautious we are of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how much we remember him, and how much we try to avoid the red lines that he has set for human beings. And we have 5 minutes left, coming to the last part, inshallah ta'ala. Now let's discuss, after all this, after understanding what taqwa is, after understanding why we need taqwa, and then really what role it plays in our life, we come to really what this short talk was all about, which is how do we maintain and how do we avoid relapse. So what do you guys think? Let's take like 1 or 2 quick answers, inshallah ta'ala, after listening to all this. What do you think? How are we gonna maintain? What did we do? And how do we maintain in order for us to keep this muscle of taqwa healthy and growing? It's really a vicious cycle. In systems thinking, there's something like a vicious cycle, which is, each component reinforces the other. So, more obedience, like we said, practicing obedience equals taqwa. So you practice obedience, it builds taqwa. The more taqwa you have, the more you're going to practice obedience. So it's kind of that vicious cycle. Make an oath. Brother Ghulam says, make an oath to obey Allah. Sister Nirusha, continue some of the restrictions you've set on yourself after Ramadan as well. Exactly, it's no rocket science, right? We did something. It's like basically leaving a training program in the gym and then coming in your house, having some equipment, setting a plan for yourself, setting a system for yourself, and basically continuing the good deeds. Same idea. What did we do in Ramadan that was different? We stayed away from things that are useless. We stayed away from things that are not building this muscle, like we stay away from garbage, eating garbage, stuff like chips and cake and all that stuff that is only putting sugar into our bodies. When we're dieting, we stay away from those. When we're fasting, we stay away from garbage stuff. That does not help us grow. Not only that, it does not even help us remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we stay away from those companies, we stay away from the Netflix, we stay away from everything that, people leave movies, people do all this stuff, naturally when Ramadan comes. Why do you leave it? And why do you basically then insist on continuing it after? There are things that are going to make us remember Allah, and then there are things that are going to take us away from Allah. So we maximize our engagement in things that make us remember Allah and have this taqwa, build our muscle. And we stay away from things that keep us away from the remembrance of Allah. So same idea. What do we do after Ramadan? We engage in these things. So okay, we fasted. We know fasting, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that fasting is good only if we knew about it. It's best for us. So we fast, we engage in more sunnah and nawafil, ibadat and things. So we fasted. Let's continue to fast Mondays and Thursdays. Let's continue to fast the 3 white nights. Let's continue to do all the other, fasts that we have. What else did we do? We stood in Qiyamul Layl. Okay, so why can't we continue praying Qiyamul Layl? It's not restricted, right? To Ramadan. Let's continue to basically make an oath, like Brother Ghulam said, make an intention, make the promise with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to engage in Qiyamul Layl. What else did we do? We engaged in dhikr. Let's continue to basically engage in dhikr and set goals for ourselves. Like we set goals for the gym, let's set goal for this muscle. It's really the same thing. We need knowledge. We need knowledge so that we understand where the red lines are, because if we don't know where the red lines are, then we're lost in we don't have orientation. We don't know where we stand against to Allah's commands. So we need to know His commands. So, engage in learning about Islam. Learn about the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His prohibitions. One thing I want to point out, which is important, I believe, is, really there's 2 things: build habits, and number 2, it needs to be systematic. In Ramadan, it's easy for us to fast. Why? You know why? Because everybody's doing it, and it's more difficult to do it outside. Because everybody engages in it in a systematic manner, and therefore it's easier to do that. So similarly, find a system for yourself. Alhamdulillah, majority of you are already part of the I3 Institute. If not, then join a class, join a good company that's going to always remind us of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and a company that's always going to keep us in that state of remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And really it goes back to extra obedience. Yeah, like I said, practicing obedience, extra obedience. And I'm going to end with this because I know there's tafsir that is starting at 6:30. So all we have to do is basically set these systems in place, make those goals similar to the things that we were doing in Ramadan, and we engage in extra stuff, and we stay away from stuff that was detrimental to us. So the last thing that I'm going to leave you guys with, inshallah ta'ala, is the hadith that basically really tells us about this, engaging in extra sunnah and nawafil. It is a hadith narrated in Sahih Bukhari by Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, says, it's a hadith Qudsi, that Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, Allah said, I will declare war against him who shows hostility to a pious worshipper of mine, and the most beloved things with which my slave comes nearer to me is what I have enjoined upon him, and my slave keeps on coming closer to me through performing nawafil, which is praying or doing extra deeds besides the obligatory, till I love him. So I become his sense of hearing with which he hears, his sense of sight with which he sees, and his hand with which he grips, and his leg with which he walks. And if he asks me, I will give him. And if he asks my protection, refuge, I will protect him, which is give him my refuge. And I do not hesitate to do anything as I hesitate to take the soul of a believer, because he hates death, and I hate to disappoint him. So in short, inshallah, to cut, Assalamu alaikum Shaykh Usta, I know tafsir is starting. So to cut it short, really, practicing obedience equals taqwa. So how do we avoid the relapse after Ramadan? By practicing our obedience and engaging ourselves in really the actions that we engaged ourselves in during Ramadan, and staying away from the actions that keep us away from the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if we stay cognizant of that, that's going to build our muscle of taqwa, inshallah ta'ala. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us from among those who have attained taqwa in this month, and to allow us to continue to engage in activities that are going to build our muscle of taqwa, so that we're successful not just in this life, but in the life of the hereafter. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Jazakumullahu khairan, everybody. Let's move on to the tafsir, inshallah.